Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. Happy Sunday. So today I kind of wanted to speak a little bit about the nature of Torah and how it relates to prayer. So why don't we just take a moment? I don't want to speak too much, but I have some notes because I wanted to lay out a clear framework on how Torah and prayer, how prayer is linked directly to Torah. So, and the Bible. So maybe we shouldn't be quite in front of our meditation space and maybe move to somewhere seated down. I don't want to talk too much about this. So I'm going to skip over portions of my notes and go back to it in a couple days or next week. So I need to take a moment. A headache has just set on at the wrong moment before I want to teach. So I'm going to try to calm that down so I can give a good presentation. So people could come in and sort of align, and I'm going to take a moment and we could all sort of center ourselves. Okay. Oof. So, last week. Last week, we discussed about returning to our alignment. That this period of the month of Elul and returning to God, the period of Sefirot, which the Sephardic people have already begun, and for the Ashkenazi Jews begins in 8 days, officially, sort of beginning the period leading up to Rosh Hashanah, which is on the 23rd of September. And I'm not going to get into that during this talk. What I really want to focus is this returning to our alignment, which I discussed, with God, begins a period of repair. We are putting ourselves on a new path, a new road, through this period of reflection. This new alignment for the upcoming year, and the new year, the new Jewish New Year, is on Rosh Hashanah. So we're deciding to take a period to assess ourselves and to reconnect with God. And prayer is central during this time. There are prayers of asking for forgiveness for things we've done. And it's having the heart of teshuvah, the heart of desire of returning to God. And really, it's returning to the pure part of ourselves. It's not only about having a sense of guilt or sin, feeling that we were sinful, but it's really about having the possibility to renew ourselves. So it's very positive. It's not to beat ourselves down, but to give an assessment and to have that reaching out to renew ourselves. Sefirot nearly means forgiveness. The season to return. And it's really based on prayer. So in Judaism, there are 2 streams of what's considered prayer, 2 different forms. It's the steady current of mitzvot, practices that are formulated. And then there's the spontaneous cry of the heart. During the period of Sefirot, we focus on the 13 attributes of mercy that God has. And I discussed them last year, and I will discuss them again this year. But God basically comes to the sense that God forgives our errors, and He cleanses us, and He's compassionate and merciful and gracious. And it's on that bedrock that we can undergo a period of realignment, of redirection, and leave what was done in the past behind us and really focus on going forward, because there is that possibility of renewal based on there being that mercy. Otherwise, there really would be no opportunity to renew ourselves because there's not that sort of open door that's available. Yes, does that make sense? So, in Judaism, there are active ways of binding ourselves to God, to have prayer through action. So, the observing of these things is itself a form of prayer, because the act of obedience to do them embodies a devotion without words. So classically, it's Shabbat, study of Torah, honoring one's parents, giving charity, observing the dietary laws, like not eating pork or shellfish, daily prayers like the Shema, giving blessings before and after eating, acts of loving kindness. It's a lived expression of faith, like lighting candles on sunset to begin the Shabbat, the holy day of observance, which is Saturday. Well, it starts on Friday night, goes through Saturday evening. So it's a setting aside a time to open sacred texts, to be amongst family, not to work, not to use electronics, depending on how far one keeps Shabbat. And by this, we maintain our sense of covenant. It's a form of prayer in action. And the body itself is an instrument of prayer by what we do physically. Yes? And then there's this second form. These are words spoken to God. It runs parallel to what I've spoken. Here our lips and our thoughts, rather than our body, carry the devotion and the interaction with God. It encompasses liturgy, or more formal prayers such as the Siddur, the prayer book, which has emphasis on morning, afternoon, and evening prayers, as well as personal supplication, hopes, confession, is the spontaneous cry of the heart. So the prophets, the Psalms, the Torah testify to this mode of prayer, where the human voice arises as music, argument, lament. There's even passages where prophets argue with God and asks for greater leniency. There's a sense of engagement. So there's these two streams: to follow the mitzvot of what we're asked to do without prayer risks being a little too mechanical. Doing it, but there isn't a sort of informal, heartfelt engagement. It becomes more rote. And then too much prayer without the actions of a formal structure risks being too abstract. prayer without grounding, without being rooted, without following the guidance, keeping the holy day holy, the seventh day, which in Judaism, the seventh day falls on Saturday. And so you're not keeping with one's obligation. It's really a marriage of both, in my opinion. And also in the in the opinion of famous scholars like Rambam. So Jewish tradition preserves both ways of prayer. The body, through our actions, enacts God's will, while our voice, our prayer, seeks God's presence. In a more of a reaching out. But that's also found through the Shabbat. It's found through the lighting of the candles. It's found through the prayer of the Shema, which is a more institutionalized prayer. I'm sorry, I need to take a moment. My head is a little spinning, and just bear with me, please. I'm back. Sorry about that. I just needed a moment to try to work on keeping my head from spinning. All right. Feel better. So, I have to be grounded when I teach, otherwise I feel better. I just need a moment to kind of ground. I don't want to continue pushing through and it doesn't come out the way I want it to. And this is a very important teaching. So, and next week we are speaking about something else, and I don't have an extra week to just kind of bump this forward. So unlike some other traditions, step back and regroup here. There's a huge emphasis on prayer. Prayer in the evening, and it's your personal prayer to God, and there's formal prayers one does, and one may go to services, which it's seen as being a form of prayer as well. Judaism is a little different. Prayer can be an action. So not eating certain foods that are not which are considered not kosher is a form of prayer, because you're entering and remaining in covenant with God. By the act of obedience is a form of covenant, therefore an enacted prayer in keeping in your alignment. Does that make sense? Going to Shabbat, keeping the holy day holy, the seventh day, is a form of prayer through action by being obedient. You remain in covenant, remain in alignment, and when you're in alignment, it is a lived prayer because one is in alignment with the Shekhinah. I spoke a little bit about that last week, okay? Now, whether it's formally the last two steps I mentioned, I'm not sure. I would need to research. But basically, that's the gist of it. Studying Torah. By doing so, it's an act of prayer. Study is an act of prayer, but also keeping to the mitzvot of studying Torah is considered an act of prayer. Now, these are not from the Ten Commandments. These are rules, which scholars have laid out as what one needs to do to be in keeping with the commandments and to be in good standing with God. So these are prayer through action. Now, going to Friday evening services to begin the Shabbat and the lighting of the Shabbat candles, right, which everyone's seen in films, is done there communally, or it could be done at home. But then there are prayers that are institutionalized during the Shabbat service where one actually prays. But keeping the holy day holy on its own is considered to be a form of prayer. Prayer in action. Okay? So this is sort of it's a little different from other religions that I've studied. And so I kind of wanted to mention that stream. And this is a little bit of what we're going to be discussing going forward here. So Rambam, a great scholar, lays out in his book, Sefer HaMitzvot, Book of Commandments, and he emphasized, his first 8 that he lists, he emphasizes through the first 8 a handful of daily or constant pillars to Jewish life. The ones that in practice shape covenant and prayer by action. Scholars consider the first 8 to be the main principal ones because they're the first 8 he lists out of a long list. Belief in God. It's foundational commandment. Affirming God's existence and sovereignty, not to worship other gods, avoiding idolatry in all its forms, to love God. These are all biblically Torah-based, right? To love God with all your heart, soul, and might. Rambam makes clear that this is not just emotion, but cultivated through study and reflection. Number 4, to revere God. To fear and revere God. So fear here is interpreted to be revere, to revere. Interesting English word. Let me just give an example. You can revere your grandfather if you respect him, or a public figure. You put a little bit on a pedestal, up for praise and reverence. Yeah, revere is a form of reverence, right? It's a sort of high level of respect. You appreciate his conduct, the words. There's a certain presence of high level of respect, and considered you need to act respectfully to the person. Yes? No. Right? So there's an awe that shapes our moral restraint because we revere God. It shapes how we behave because we wish to be kept in, we wish to be respectful. We have an appreciation and a devotion, and we wish to behave in a way that God would find to be suitable. So one reveres one's parents, therefore you're not a bad boy or girl. Okay? Number 5, to study, which H.P. Shalom clearly is all about as well. It's prayer, energy, but also the mind. Study, understanding, logic, knowing right from wrong from an intellectual perspective, and then also learning to tap into it from an energetic, emotional perspective, which is also what I teach. Study is critical. You can't be ignorant because you can be misled or a wind of emotion and off you go and you think you're correct. And you don't have your mind saying, whoa, this is against every single text. This is really not right. And that alarm goes off and be like, whoa, I feel like to do this. But your mind's like, no. Right? And so it's important. It's mind and heart. Intelligence, brain, gray matter, as well as something more. An innate intelligence, an innate wisdom. Can't, in my humble opinion, be one or the other. All trapped in your mind, then there's not really a road that is being walked. So you're intellectualizing it, but then does it become lived? Are you able to move along the path? Or has it become academic, a concept? That's one pitfall. Then the other extreme, it's all energy and I go with it and, well, it's 1970s and everybody knows I'm not a fan of 1970s crazy, right? So that's all energy, impulse, not so much an intellectual constraint. Both. You're empowered. It's the union of heaven and earth. Energy grounded. Wisdom, beauty, concepts, earth reality. Yes? God, heaven, earth, man, woman, human beings. Heaven, theory, beautiful concepts that are, point to whatever. And then earth, our reality. God help us all. So what we are doing here is we're feeding ourselves with medicine acts that help us, that we are able to unite heaven and earth within ourselves, help unite our brains, very earth-based, right? They decay with our bodies, right? The synapses, the channels, the electrical currents that give thought, whatever goes on in there, stops with us. Heart stops, brain dies, decomposes, bones left. There's no more brain. There's a skull and brain gone, right? So that's earth, temporary. Heaven, that inner knowing, the Spirit of God living within us. What I'm trying to show through mantra and meditation, still the mind. So you see something else that's in you that's amazing, which is your true self. And then you learn how to work with both. You see how I teach, and yet I can be energetically out there, and yet it's grounded, and one helps the other. Yes? And that uniting of heaven and earth is that repair, is a little bit of what's going on in this period. We're using ceremony and high holy days, communal, following and going, Shabbats, We're now studying Torah, whether we believe it or, I'm citing, this is based on Torah. We're studying holy texts. But then the point of what I'm sharing is about the importance of prayer, the energetic outreach to heaven, which isn't based on our minds. When we pray, we do. Prayer may be written down. Somebody thought about it carefully. And over centuries, it may be edited and perfected. That's mind. And hopefully the person's aligned and devout and prayerful life. So it's all infused with blessings. So hopefully they have their heart, their heaven and earth aligned and working together. When we receive it, when we look at it, other than our minds reading it, and either we're saying it to ourselves or out loud, our minds become functional unless we're studying it. But if we are saying it, that becomes an energetic prayer. Yes? And it's very important to do that because that opens up our channels. It puts in blessings within us just by the vibration and the sacredness of the words that many people have uttered through the centuries. It's walking the energetic path. Yes? So the study of Torah is extremely helpful. And Rambam's view is that it's a direct path to loving God, and it is. Observing Shabbat, the holy day, you remember creation, and it sanctifies time. It's a time you create which is sanctified, where one lives differently and connects with God by that setting aside of time and that decision to do so. And then the last two, you recite the Shema, which is what we do before we start praying. And the eighth is outright praying. And it's based on Exodus chapter 23. And Rambam says this as an obligation of prayer itself. Rambam stresses so what I mentioned is some of them is where is words that rest in prayer, in deeds. So it's prayerful, that's prayer that's based in actions. He says in his commandment number 5 that avodah, service of God, includes prayer. And Rambam says very clearly and makes it sort of one of his rules that to pray to God every day is a Torah commandment in his interpretation. He says that actual verbal prayer, tefillah, is itself a mitzvah from the Torah, rooted in verses like, "And you shall serve the Lord your God," Exodus 23, verse 25, and to serve him with all your heart, Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 13, which many sages have interpreted as prayer. So he explains clearly that to serve God, he says this refers to service by prayer. Because later on, he mentions service by action. So he does get service by doing good deeds, charity, and by living a proper life is to serve God. But here he makes it very clear that those specific passages refers to prayer. I'm skipping through notes because I don't want to speak too much. So this is about verbal, heart-directed prayer, praising, asking, thanking, not external deeds. And Rambam is very explicit. He says everyone of the Jewish faith is obligated once a day in whatever words to turn to God. And then later on, the rabbis added formal prayers, the Amidah, fixed prayers, to help create a formula of prayers that one can use. But Rambam says they could also be your own communication from your heart. It's the importance of that personal relationship. He sees that prayer as a service to our heart. He says that there's two separate mitzvot. One external, how we act, how we live, charity and kindness and service to the world. How to serve God. But it's also about how do we serve ourselves, our heart, our core. One is external, and the other one focuses internally. And both are holy, and both are needed. And someone very wise said that one of these is a riverbed, steady and sure and defined. A riverbed is where a river runs. So it's kind of the rocks and everything that holds a river, and the waters flowing in the riverbed. Does that make sense? So it's the container of the river, the bed of the river, riverbed, right? So one of these, the prayer through action, the prayer through you do this, you don't do that, this period in time you're setting aside, study the Torah, very defined through a physical action, setting aside the decision is the riverbed. It's a container. And it's steady, it's sure, it's defined, you know what to do. The stream is what dances above it. Our engagement with God from a reaching out through prayer, through communication, through conversation, through desire to connect, that is the water that's in the container. And hopefully both of them together help carry our soul, help direct our lives, help provide a connection to the Shekhinah, help bring us into alignment. The mitzvot of prayer is the common daily current. As we sleep, as we live, we can create it in moments in time. But like I've been explaining last week and before, as one lines up, that common daily current becomes 24/7. Yes? And then the prayer through action is also a common daily current. Through what you watch, what you eat, whether it's how many times you pray in the more formal setting with traditional prayers at certain times. That's a prayer too, but it's sort of set aside as a riverbed. The thing is it done just through root? Do you just say it and do it because that's what you have to do and you don't give any thought to the prayer? You're just saying the words, but there's no engagement. It's said because that's what's said. Or, like we're doing with the Mishaberha, right? We are entering into the energy of the music. So this very famous and beautiful prayer, and this is a version of it, sort of adapted into song, becomes a lived outreach of the prayer. Why I choose it is because they're engaged in it. It's not merely reciting the words. It's connecting to what the words mean. And hopefully, I ask people to sing it because that way they can connect with the current through their voice and their heart. And that's a prayer. And it's a prayer that's lived as you do it, not merely a formula. It's great. You do the formula, yes. But also, are you engaged and it actually becomes what you're reading? So a prayer through action helps structure a community. It brings people together. It structures a rhythm. It structures something that's communal between different groups that might have been spread across the world. It's easy to teach. It's easy to preserve. There's clear rules. Spontaneous prayer is harder to teach. If the parents aren't prayerful, how does a child shown how to do that? Versus certain, you do this, you do that, it's very clear. There's text, it describes it. The other prayers are more on a mystical side. And if you rely just on that, a tradition can be lost because there's not a structure to house it. Just water without the riverbed, floods everywhere. And then next thing you know, you've incorporated things from other religions, and the ones that you came from kind of gets diluted and lost over time. But having that riverbed creates a container on which everything else rests. You see. So there's really these two things going on at the same time, and they're complementary. Both are important, in my opinion. So I'm going to focus on prayer connecting with God individually, because this is the period of time we're living in. This part of the religious calendar. Yes, we go to services, but the prayer books for this period of Sishiot really focus on connecting with God individually, reaching out. And it has a very, very deep biblical anchor to it, which is sometimes a little bit not as focused upon. And so I wanted to really anchor it today. So I'm going to cite certain things just to make it very clear. So in Genesis, I'm not going to give the exact passages, just save some time. At that time, man began to call upon the name of the Lord. It's one of the earliest verses showing us humans praying to God directly. So it's personal. Abraham pleads with God on keeping him from sweeping away the wicked. He's actually bargaining with God on how God is going to assess certain things, on his decision. So there's an active engagement and an active conversation. In Exodus, Moses engages with God after the golden calf incident about how God will direct his judgment on the people to try to prevent them being a catastrophic reaction. It's a petition. It's an urging. It's a beseeching of God. In Genesis, again, Abraham prays. Abraham's servant prays for guidance in finding a wife for Isaac. So this is a normal person, not a patriarch, praying to God for everyday help. Exodus. I already mentioned that one. In Samuel, Hannah prays for a child. She was deeply distressed, and prayed to God and wept bitterly. So it shows that prayer could be very human, very emotional, with a lot of desire and wish and praying that something will come about. In Psalms chapter 34, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. Direct, personal, everyday pleas. And God reacts to it. God wishes to help. God wishes to be of help to us. That is really not up for debate. It's all over the Torah and the Tanakh. It's really God collaborates and wants us to be successful and to return to him. There's a lot of focus on the judgment of God and God's wrath and everything, but there's a whole many more sections about God wishing to help us, sending prophets, giving signs, giving teachings, and these passages which have been assembled, giving us examples on what people have done in the past and God's response to it. Sort of making a history to show us aspects of God's engagement, to give us courage to reach out in the same way. Psalms 51, David, who supposedly wrote some of these psalms, which is believed, but it's supposed to be 3 authors, but I'm not getting into that. After he sinned, have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity. It's repentance as a form of speech. He doesn't do a ritual to cleanse himself. He prays to be cleansed. Yes? Again in Psalms, I cry aloud to the Lord. I pour out before him my complaint. A complaint as prayer. It's not polished. It's very honest. Samuel prays on behalf of Israel in crisis. You're interceding. You're asking for help on a larger scale, and it's a spontaneous, immediate prayer. It's not planned. It just comes out. It emerges. In Kings, Solomon's prayer at the temple dedication. A long, heartfelt prayer for forgiveness, guidance. In Chronicles, King Josiah leads the people in prayer. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you. It shows a dependence on God, and the prayer is communal for God to help guide us. Later on, Josiah gathers the people to pray for deliverance. Ezra, oh my God, I am too ashamed and disgraced to lift up my face to you. He prays about his brokenness in ordinary human emotion. He doesn't just walk away and disconnect because he feels ashamed and disgraced and therefore not worthy of God. He brings that to God. He engages with where he's at with God. These aren't like prettied up little things. This is raw human reality. It's an honest communication with where you are. But by engaging, one can open up the situation and find repair. One can ask for repair. One can just say, I don't know where to go with this. I'm so angry at you. Well, that's a prayer. And then maybe it'll come to you, or you'll get an inkling, or things will shift in you that you do see how to go about this. A different way of seeing it, realizing blame was not properly placed, or working through it to repair. But that engagement occurs. You see? This is why the water above the riverbed is really the life of the riverbed. Otherwise, the riverbed is dry. And with time will erode away. The riverbed grows and grows deeper with the prayer that goes through it. The prayer deepens it, makes the river more alive. The flow is greater. It's almost like the Shekhinah. You go through something, you're really not engaged. Okay, you do it, that's wonderful. It's there and it helps. But you engage it fully. You put your energy, your thoughts, your love, your prayers in it. That riverbed, that container that's essential, becomes alive. The river can be seen like the Shekhinah flowing. The greater the prayer, the greater the repair, the greater the engagement, the greater the flow of the Shekhinah. The riverbed can be considered like the nadis, the energy currents that are all over the body. They say there's like 72,000. Next week we'll discuss that. But that's the riverbed. Almost see it like your nerves. Actually, I probably think they're one and the same, but I'm not going into that right now. So see it as sort of your nerves, right? Big nerves and then small little ones, right to the end of the fingertips. This is why we can feel things in our body. No nerves, nerve damage, you're numb, right? So there's an impulse, this life, this energy going through it. But we can see it that the flow is sort of interrupted because of our blocks. We're not in alignment. The prayer, the entering into alignment, moves the kundalini, the life force in our body. We could say the Shekhinah. Not exactly, maybe it is. I have to ponder that a little more, right? You move that through, I think it is. You move it through that, and it flows more openly through the nadis, through the currents in the body, which lines us up. No dents, no beaver dams. It really goes and expands. From the kundalini teachings and the chakras, we clear the blockages in our body, and the flow spins properly. And basically, to switch paradigms, you go up Jacob's ladder, which one could see it as the spine, in the central column of the sefirot, the middle one, which goes up to Keter, God. Do you see? But there has to be a repair so that riverbed grows. And it's not mistake the power, or put aside the power of the river. The Grand Canyon was made by a river. There's a river at the bottom of it. And that river at some points started on the surface. And with millennia, it grew deeper and deeper and deeper. A river is a very powerful thing. That Grand Canyon isn't going to move anywhere. That river is really stuck. It's never going to really leave its banks. And the banks would be everything that's all around it. It might be a bank at the bottom, but it's much more than that. So the flow of devotion deepens how religious we become. Don't become religious maniacs, but we become devoted. Our faith, capital F, becomes firm and secure. It becomes like a rock in the storm, because you've built those patterns through actions, through prayer, through thoughts, through charity, the keeping of Shabbat, watching what you eat. You realize that it builds a structure, and that structure holds you. It's not a prison. And you make the most of the structure, because you're not just going about it dotting the I's and crossing the T's. When you're there and doing it, you're really there and doing it. You're seeing the power of the tradition, and you're really looking for you're reaching for the mystical aspect, that engagement, that sparkle. Just lighting the candles of Shabbat is not just putting up a candle and then there we are. You see it as a whole thing, as a connection, as a gateway that increases the flow, brings in the blessings, and we heal. We line up, the sefirots line up, and then off we are, off we go. This is my new favorite image. And then bingo. But how did we get there? It's walking the path. That's the path. It's also the path of clearing our bodies. 1 second. I don't know where I'm going with what I'm saying, but here. Found this gem for next week. Mm-hmm. Don't pay attention to the symbols, but here. These like the sensual. One's masculine, what's feminine. Do you see masculine red, feminine white? Do you see? Well, I'm not getting into the teaching of what all these means, but do you understand? So when it flows properly through the cycle of constraint and openness, lunar, solar, and things flow, we go up and you see the third eye in the purple, and then you have white above. It's the proper flow. And how do you get there? He's in a meditation posture. He's aligned, showing alignment, being in the flow, equilibrialized. The meditation posture itself is to have a connection with wisdom, with God. Some of these religions are deistic. They do have a God, just a different one. It's seen as connecting. And in some, there's no God in it. But the wisdom, higher wisdom, more divine wisdom, it's symbolized by this. And so the formulas you go about by keeping certain things and doing certain things, but it's the engagement of walking the path of having that communion with the upper chakras, that communion with the upper sefirot, the repair, teshuva, the repair that's needed for us to align. And this is what this period is about. It's a dedicated period in this year where we do that work. And it can be a little work. It's not like, Disneyland. An assessment, good, bad, and a deciding to, okay, here's where I need to change, or I need to pray a little more. Or I need to realize why I behave certain ways and change that because it's not good. It's essential on the path because unlike a riverbed is stuck, this is a different analogy of a riverbed, so we're switching to something else. Riverbed's very stuck. Grand Canyon ain't going anywhere. It may alter a little bit, but it's not going anywhere. It's very deep. That's what I call locked in. Really not much you can do. There's no awareness that there's anything different. Doesn't even see the ground above. It's there and not going. But for most of us, by doing the repair, we're altering our riverbed. We realize we're not only stuck on the 101 freeway. We don't have blinders on like horses. They have blinders so they don't see things to the side. They're focused. They don't know anything else but where they're directed. When we do the repair and we look and we engage, we start seeing the exits. We start seeing the transfer to different freeways. We see the off-ramp that goes above the freeway and goes back in, heading you in the opposite direction because you're not headed anywhere you want to go and you realize the right direction is behind you. So you do a 180 and you turn back. That's altering your riverbed. And like I've said many times, no one is that far gone that there's not the opportunity for repair, repentance, and a decision to do better. And God has infinite mercy and compassion that is greater than what we conceive of as human beings. And this is why the 13 attributes of grace and mercy are discussed during this period, which I discussed last year and I will discuss again in a week or two, because it gives us that our prayers will be heard, that there is the opportunity of change, that it's not wasted time that's just going to be rejected outright. So why bother? It is worth our time and effort to bother, to engage. I teach prayer. I teach other things. Others teach the structure. Even if one doesn't have structure, you're not religious, you've been turned off by it and you're never going back. That's okay. You can create your own structure at home. Create what works for you and make it your structure. Give yourself certain things that you do for yourself that provides that container that holds and maintains you, that prayer life can fit in with. Could be one day a week where you spend a little more time with God, reading, praying, studying. Could be a little bit every day. It could be throughout the day when you think of it. It's making your relationship and your life more meaningful because you're aspiring to better yourself. I honestly feel that one of the purposes in life, not the greatest one, is to improve ourselves. And if you're religious, you would say, I improve myself to grow closer to God. And my whole life is the journey back to God. There's family, there's work, there's everything else that goes on with a human life. But the main purpose is to evolve, to go up the sefirot, to go up the chakras. And it's not that we go up the chakras, so I throw in a little chakra teaching. It's the energy always flows up the chakras. There is always something going to the top. Otherwise, we really wouldn't live. Where is it? But where is the main block? Where are you stuck? From what frequency do you live? The bottom chakra, more survival based, very aggressive, competitive, wanting more. Each one has their thing, and you see where people kind of are stuck. And that's sort of where you're stuck. You see, first chakra blocks maybe might be, I have to look into each one. Could be, I definitely is more survival, life, death. It's more of a existential thing. Each one has their issues, but there's always a flow. And as it unlocks, there's a balance. So you learn to have a balanced life. You get the positive of each one, not the negative. See? You get the positives of each sefirot, not their imbalance. And I think that's the purpose of life, to reunite. The repair isn't just for the sake of repair. I just found an incredible image and I think I'll share with you. I've been waiting for this one for a while. But first, I'm going to share this one. Where is it? Here. Perfect. the person reaching out, and then you see the person enveloping higher frequencies, living from the upper chakras. So he has sort of his wings, higher frequency embodiment. He shoots up the white light. Why? Because his chakras are aligned, and at the top it becomes white. All the colors of the rainbow come from white light. It's not the color white, it's clear light white. So it's clear light. You can't see it. It's like the sun rays. You don't see the light. Right? It's transparent. But if you put a crystal in front, a prism, it splits out the colors of the rainbow. So if there's mist in the sky after a rain and the clouds clear, right, you see rainbows. It's the splitting out of the clear light into the rainbows. He's shooting up his central alignment, which here they make white, in purity. And that's the prayer. It's the communion to God. It's going up the central column of the sefirot. And out comes the blessings. And remember, each blessing here is the blessings of the various sefirot when they're in alignment. We discussed this like in February, March. And that's up and down, like Jacob's ladder, is the communion. We repair, we adjust, we realign. And then we learn, we grow, we transform. We walk up, the angels, the blessings, the Shekhinah comes down. It's the golden ladder. The ladder is our spine. We go up, the blessings come down. This is that I really rarely did not see taught. So when it happened to me, I was shocked. You go up, that's part of it. You got to bring it back down. It's not just shooting up, it's embodying it. There's a real power when you've connected to bring it back down. You've connected with heaven. Wonderful, beautiful. Mystics have connected with heaven, and they live in caves. And you know what? Great. Clairvoyant. But they don't really do a lot of good, and they're really not living in a real world scenario. They're out there. They're gone. They're here, but they're gone. It's bringing that wisdom and alignment back down into your life. So it's embodied in your speech, actions, your heart, your care. Embodied in the essence of your energy. And it gives you and heals you with physical life, because the imbalances that might cause heart attacks or cancers are removed. You see? They might even repair cancers that are going, because the causes and conditions that give rise to them are diminished, and there's less tension that feeds it, that keeps it alive or keeps the body's natural healing abilities from being as effective. This is why people who are very spiritual or meditators, they tend to live longer lives because of that balance. Not so much caught up in emotions and anger and all this, they're more in harmony. And this all lines up with modern day science, except these teachings are very, very old, before modern day science. And so we have to bring it back down to integrate. And so there's that repair and also the desire to become more and more of an Emmanuel, because that's the integration. We see here. If you look back and read the lives of the saints, the prophets, holy people, people in wherever in caves, or priests, rabbis, the great ones. There are few exceptions to this. But for the most of all of them, they had to repair. They had their issues, and some of them had that issues for their entire life. They just couldn't get over it, but they did a lot of good in spite of certain issues. Others had to work more, and they were able to clear all of them. But there was a path. A lot of people just don't pop out of their mother, and there they are, the golden child. They work through it. They struggle through it. They bleed through it. But look where they are at the end. They've found fulfillment of their potential in this lifetime. And I think that is the greatest journey we can do. And it's an inward journey. Clearing our pathways, it's outward, because by doing outward acts, which we want to do, because as we clear inwards, we have the desire to do good. So they feed on each other, but the outward acts clears the inward path. And then as we grow, we want to help others more and more, because that's the desire of the upper chakras, of the upper sefirot. And then life no longer becomes about us as much. No longer about being super wealthy or having 100 women or men or both and whatever. It becomes something much more intangible. And what makes you happy or sad is not necessarily what makes others happy or sad. You're living in a different frequency of embodiment. You perceive things different. Things that normally previously made sense to you no longer make sense, and you can't remember how you used to think about them. It's no longer in your reality anymore. And it's not that you lose touch with solid ground. It's that you've evolved to something that's grounded, but is not as common. So when people look at you, they think you're a little crazy, but you aren't. Because everybody would be like that if they all sort of did their work and cleared a little bit. Do you see? Repair is essential. You do enough repair, you get to a place. This is quite the image. I love powerful images. Not sure if there was anyone ever quite like this who walked, but there are stories of people probably like that who walked. Garden of Eden. Those people in heaven probably are. It's an alignment. It's a complete alignment to the perfection that's embodied, has a human body. And that person has a personality. I found how to zoom in. It was so easy, yet in front of me, yet I didn't see it. Oh. What's the point of zooming in on my side if I can't share it? One moment. I know a workaround. That's odd. One moment. Hmm. Oh, there we go. So there is a personality here. Person's not vacant or neutral, that you don't see that there's someone there. And that's a very important point. I had this fear, everybody has this fear, that when you do the walk, you're erasing yourself. No. You're just awakening the very pure parts of yourself when you find your alignment, when your sefirots align. And that is different for everyone. Everybody has a different balance. The proper proper alignment of the various. Where I taught it, I learned in many different ways. So everybody has their elements: earth, water, fire, space. Everybody, water. So everybody has a different mixture. Somebody has more fire, more water, more air, more earth, more. So do you see? It creates the foundation of all the personality types. And at the same time, somebody could have the same collaboration mixture and be similar, but because of their childhood and things, or how they grew up, or even what school they went to or didn't go to, it creates a different balance. And therefore, the way they are, when they're purified, is different than somebody else who had a slightly different childhood or orientation. You see, so you're working with who you are as well, and how you were sort of created. This image, I haven't fully explained all of it, but the different colors to the orange, red, blue, green symbolize different elements. So that's one way of understanding it from an element construction point of view. There's another way of understanding it, that people have different alignments of the sefirots in certain ways that give rise to certain personalities. We are not all the same. And when we do our work, we are not erasing ourselves at all. There's a great fear, and sometimes it feels that way. We're like, oh, I'm changing. What's me? Who am I exactly? That's part of the investigation that we go through. But it doesn't mean that we're nothing. Because we're the children of God, and God made us in His image. So we have a lot of possibility in us. Trying to find the image. Now they all. And He made us different. So we're refining the gold that's within us. And as we refine our gold, we discover there was always gold there. And we realize that this is the greatest journey you can undergo. It's not exploring the world. And God knows I love doing that. And I've explored a lot. And I love putting on a backpack and no fancy hotels and just doing it at ground level, kind of gritty, small little hotels. I'm not living on the street by any sake, but, like hostels and things, small hotels, But really, taking the buses, public transportation, taking the trains, eating street food. It's wonderful. You explore different cultures. It's an amazing thing one can do. But the interior life, I would say, and many have said before me, is the greatest journey. It's inward. You don't need to go anywhere. And the road is repair. You fix every rung of that ladder. So in the Psalms, the poor man cried and the Lord heard him. God hears our prayer. He is like the good father. He wants us to make that phone call. He wants us to say hello. He would like us to say thank you. He would not like us to only call when we need something. But at the same time, he wants us to call if we need something. And the good father is understanding if the child only calls when they need something. Because that's love. And if that's hard to understand or you think differently, then I suggest you read the Torah and the Tanakh and start with the Psalms or somewhere else and come to see those descriptions, to get that balanced understanding. Because blocks of the mind and of knowledge cause energetic blocks in our body. And that keeps us from lining up with truth, and it throws us onto the wrong path. Because having a wrong understanding leads us to make wrong decisions, which have wrong outcomes. Having the right understanding, our minds, it leads us to have better decisions, which leads us to having better alignment, which increasingly will lead to better outcomes, which in turn, making better alignment, in turn leads to better decisions. And you're on the upward movement up the spiral, and you're opening the flow to the Shekhinah and alignment, clearing, aligning up, and moving up the chakras or the sefirot, as opposed to tightening, and it's being reinforced downwards. And then everything gets into more and more unbalance. In Deuteronomy, what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us whenever we call upon him? We call, he approaches. He gets engaged in our lives. You do feel and see blessings. Things do shift, and you're like, how did this shift? And then you begin to realize the more you pray, sometimes the more things shift. It's not on niceties and little truisms, but it becomes faith with a capital F, because you start understanding, because you see it. And you can't necessarily understand why, but you do. But you begin to realize there's no other reason, because it has to be this. It's a lived faith. But at the beginning, you kind of have to take somebody's word for it, or you start studying more. And then you understand, oh, this is what the person was talking about. Oh, you know what? I need to give this a try. And then you see for yourself. People can point to a soup and tell you this is fish soup and describe it all you want. It's not going to poison you. It's not going to poison you, right? And it's good for you. But you think it's kind of poisonous, or you don't believe in fish or whatever. So you study, and then you look like, oh, well, look at this. It's not poisonous. I'm using a very extreme example. It's not poisonous. It's safe. I don't believe in fish. Well, it's safe. Let me just try. Oh my God. What's this? I'm like, it's fish. Oh. Then things shift for you. So it's not reckless. It's intelligent. In Hosea chapter 14, take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, forgive all our sins and receive us graciously, that we may render the bulls of our lips. What it's saying at the end, we will repay bulls with our lips. And it's been taken to mean, even though this was a prophecy, that when the age of animal sacrifices ended, 170 AD, but back then all religions did that. Horrific, but everybody did that. There was seen that you could move from having to do physical sacrifices of animals to making it with words of prayer, confession, and praise. That prayer can replace physical offerings. The altar becomes our lips and our heart and our intent in that communication. So this prophetic voice from many centuries earlier is saying that prayer itself is an offering and it's acceptable to God. That God, please forgive our sins. And Rashi and Randak say that this citation means that prayer is not a lesser thing. It was always meant to be an offering in itself. And this is how services in synagogues are anchored as prayers. And the offering is the prayer, the act of praying. And it's essential for this time of year. I really wanted to anchor this. Everybody knows I do not tend to really give biblical citations and anchor it in this way, because I work in other ways, more on energy and the path aspect. But I find it extremely important to really anchor the importance of prayer. And I think I've done that in a lot of detail, because I didn't want to leave a lot of daylight. The upper sefirot are connected to God. when we pray, we're in kingdom, reaching out through foundation, up to beauty, up to the crown. We actively are sending our energy upwards. Energy. It clears because we're making the effort of reaching out. It clears pathways. It opens. It helps the flow by doing that. And then you connect to wisdom and understanding. So we can do it by actions. That takes a long time. Or we can engage the stream of blessings that's available to us. And or, if you're not religious, but you could still get blessings. But if you don't pray, you can with intention. Universe, help me. Or you pray out, I want to be a better person, or I need guidance. And it's sent out generally. Whichever form you take, because it's your preference, it's still that energetic moving up. And we think it's outwards, and it can be, but I'm going to find the right image here. It's inwards. Remember, it's outwards, it's inwards, you don't know. You're moving energy up from the lower chakras to the top of your head, to the third eye and above. With that intent, that intent itself is higher level energies of prayer. So you're not activating the root chakra with a prayer, you're activating actually the upper chakras. And it could bypass a lot of the blocks you have before. Now, to what extent you have access depends on how much the flow can go up from the lower chakras. So hence somebody who's aligned can really connect in prayer and in wisdom just because they've done their work. However, you still can to a certain extent. And at the beginning, you feel you're praying to a wall because the pathways have to clear and move. But because you are now directing energy to the upper chakras, the lower chakras kind of have to start giving. And the energy starts moving up. And as it moves up, it'll clear up there. But a lot of it is, which road do you choose to walk? Where do you have your focus? If your focus is in lower chakra living, good luck on getting the top ones to clear. But if your focus is trying to get to upper chakra living, alignment of heart with wisdom and divine guidance, or upper chakras, high frequency guidance if you're not religious, the guidance of the universe, your intent, which I'm saying your desire is important to be at an upper frequency, sort of moves everything up because the higher frequency is above. So if you're stuck on lower ones, you're doing things and your desire is to be higher, the frequency is going to move up because the intent is a higher frequency intent, not the lower. So if it's all about me, there's not a lot of heart chakra. Throat chakra is open because you're probably all about yourself, so you could definitely express that. That's probably blown open. There's no upper, there's no wisdom. That's the purple, and there's no ones above. So the me, and the actions of that really lock you into the lower chakras. But the desire, I me, but I want to be more, and you pray for that, the intent, mental restriction, that mental desire, that stuck riverbed of me, you're now saying, well, I'm here, but I want it to be more like this over here. Just the thought of doing that takes some of the energy from the lower chakras and places it into the upper chakras. So you start now having a split emphasis, and that's the beginning of change. And then suddenly your actions change because your desire changes, because the road you want to go on is different. And therefore the energy replaces itself. And you start walking up. And then the heart engages, because that's compassion. And then you realize, oh, me ain't so good. There's also you too. So it becomes me and you. And it's not only a complete sacrifice to others, like I only live for other people. It's balanced. So you realize you're important too. But you put the right emphasis on it being both. You take into account on how your actions affect others, and also to take care of yourself. So it's balanced, you see. You find and you develop the balance, and suddenly you're no longer living in the lower chakras. The energy passes through it, but you have the balanced aspect of the chakras. It's the good and then there's the bad. So you start shifting from the bad aspects to the good as the upper chakras, the heart, the green, and above start getting more of that energy. And therefore the balance in the good of the lower start becoming more and more obvious. The trick, the challenge is to move from the energy that tends to be stuck in this world in the lower three chakras to starting to move up more and more to the heart chakra. The diaphragm, the muscle below the lungs, is getting the energy past that. There's a lock from all the wrong motivations and actions in the lower three. We're really trying to help the energy move up to the heart. Once that energy moves up to the heart, it changes how you see your actions that you're doing. You start caring more, and that care frees up and heals the lower three chakras. And then it's just a question of time as the energy keeps moving up, and up, and then suddenly one day you seeing things differently, and even in this more magical way, and you realize that your third eye has turned on. It's the flow. It's repairing the flow of our body. This chart is nothing more than how our body is made from an energetic point of view. Wow, I'm really launching into it. I'm going to stop because we need to pray. But this last image, since I've already gone into what I want to say next week, I didn't quite find the image that I wanted to find, but this is close enough. It'll give you an idea. I don't know what's in the middle there, but let's just focus. All these numbers and things, they're the pranic, the nadis, some of them. This might be acupuncture meridians, I'm not sure. But do you see all the little lines in the legs? And I think the numbers are different pressure points, but they're all the sort of the energy currents that go through the body, and maybe their endpoints. And these are real. Anybody who's done acupuncture will realize that by putting needles in certain points moves the energy in our body. And they're also more of an energetic thing that you really can't see at a deeper level of in our body. And so when we clear and remove, everything sort of lines up. And prayer is essential. because we are focusing on the good energy. We are bringing white rocks into our pocket. Praying is a white rock, a white one, and that counterbalances some of the dark rocks, black rocks we have in our pocket. And it shifts and we rise. We start moving up Jacob's ladder. So we're going to pray briefly and then we're end for today. I hope this has been helpful. And I hope it encourages people who normally don't pray to start praying. Traditionally, the Shema is said twice a day, or you could say it 3 times a day. And what that does, it re-anchors you to God. It brings in that blessing, reconnects to the core truth of your faith. And definitely for Judeo-Christian religion, they're both based on the Old Testament, the Tanakh, based on the truth of one God, God of the Old Testament. So by calling that in, we're bringing in that blessing into us. It's calling it down. Because the prayer has its energetic essence in the upper chakras. This is getting more advanced. And by vocalizing it in our minds or in our throats, we've now brought it into our brains. And the throat, by vocalizing, is the throat chakra. So it's calling down a blessing. You see how the chakras help explain what's going on. And by calling down blessings, by reaching out for blessings, by opening for blessings, we are literally connecting and praying to the upper chakras, putting our energy up there, whether we realize it or not, by reaching out. And then when we see blessings or things shift in us, in our lives, that's the rearrangement of the chakras with an upper level flow. The angels coming up, the angels coming down. So the angels coming up, we could say our prayers are the Shekhinah rising up in us. The angels coming down is the blessings, the Shekhinah coming back into our lives, giving us at Keter, at kingdom on the bottom, the blessings from the upper realms as we live on this planet. So we reach up, and then we receive the blessings coming down. It's a lot. That's kind of what I see in this image. And I hope that helps you all understand. So let's take 10 minutes. I'm going to move my little get up to my prayer space, and then we'll pray a little bit, no more than 20, 25 minutes tops. And there we are. So I hope this helps. So back at 9:17. Okay. So, why don't people take a moment or two to stretch? And then, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then light your prayer space. And remember, when you're stretching, it's part of your prayer. So you're stretching to allow the energy to flow better in your body. You're stretching so when you're praying or meditating or saying mantras, you're not feeling pain or tension somewhere in your body, which distracts you from what you're doing and maybe even force you to stop to stretch or change your position. So it helps the flow and it helps with our focus. And it becomes a form of prayer. The structure of stretching and the posture of stretching and how you go about it is a prayer, because the reason you're doing it has a prayerful, there's a manifestation for it. And if you pray, if you stretch, even in a yoga studio, if you're doing it for flexibility, okay, that's a mundane reason, an earth-based reason. Perfectly good, nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing in the yoga studio to, of course, physically being able, more flexible and have a healthier life, that's intelligence, that's taking care of your body that God gave you. But if you also realize the flexibility allows you to think better, therefore act better, that reduces emotions, and therefore you act better, and your intent to do all that is so you could have a better actions in your life and live in a more aligned way, then that yoga practice becomes a form of prayer. Because it helps align you to live in closer keeping with the purities of the Shekhinah, and therefore your life becomes more and more like a prayer. So it becomes a structure that allows you to have a better flow river in your riverbed. Same with anything else. Cardio at the gym, a walk in the woods, mindfully. You're just doing it to sightsee and look at pretty trees. Well, that's nice. That's mundane. But if you do it to clear your mind, pray, line up, get a little perspective so you could re-engage in a better way, well, that's a form of prayer. There's a lot of forms of prayer. Knitting can be prayer, a form of prayer. Listening to religious music is definitely a form of prayer. Showering can be a very powerful form of prayer, which I haven't spoken about. There's all sorts of forms of prayer. Done mindfully, and what's your intent? More than just the physical act of what you're doing, but understanding the ramifications and the effect that it has on you if you engage with it in a deeper level. And things that are more mundane in your life suddenly become quite potent and quite wonderful, because you've opened different dimensions to them that were always there, but you didn't really access. And then the path becomes easier and easier. That makes sense? So we're going to mindfully stretch 2-3 minutes, and then mindfully take a breath in front of your prayer space. Line up again. Look, what am I doing? I'm lighting the candle to invite God here, or the Shekhinah here, or the pure light of the universe, whatever works for you, right? Then you light your incense. I always put it in the candle that I've just lit. And so it's almost the Shekhinah lighting the fragrance. And you put it over your head. You put it across your prayer space before or after. You put it over your head, and as a sort of energetic offering to God of a beautiful sacred smell. But when I do it, I slightly bow. And what have I just done there? Right? Think about it. So what did I just do? I lit it. Let's just forget the candle. Well, that goes straight up, right? You lit a candle to invite in God, straight upper chakras. So, right, through action. So then I lit the incense, right? I put it over my head as an offering. An offering to what? Well, the divine energy of God himself. So an offering to the upper chakras. So the energy is directed upwards because it's an energy that's outside of ourselves. Also inside, but here we're focusing on the outside element. Right? And the slight bow shows devotion and reverence and an act of respect to God. As you respectfully offer, the fragrance rises up. Where does it rise to? Up to heaven. It's literally a smoke offering. Because it has a sacred smell to you and it feels holy. If you found the right smell that works for you, it blesses your space and blesses your shrine, and you smell it, which puts you in a holy frame of mind. So when you go in to pray, you've just really opened up your little hotline to God, and you've created an environment which makes it conducive, which helps you to connect to the sacred within you and the sacred without you. And the slight bend and offering up just shot kundalini right up your central column out the top of your head, and you don't quite realize it. You see? And that movement up, doing it, clears. At the beginning, you don't realize it helps the flow, but after a while, when you've purified, you do that, your energy is around your third eye and above, and you kind of stay there as you pray. Because you've cleared it and the flow's there. You've just activated it and turned it on, but you've done the work. So it's not just, oh, this is nice and cute. And it really is nice and cute. And I love ritual and I love all this sort of stuff and having nice colored glass. I'm all about that. That's me personally. Other people might not be so much. Their glass might be very simple. It might be white, and that works for them, and they're all about that. And some don't care. It really doesn't matter. It's a personal choice and taste. And what you have up there or not up there, what works for you and doesn't work for someone else, really doesn't matter. It's the act that you feel the devotion and you feel the space helps you connect. And that helps you connect with the higher frequency aspects of yourself. Lower chakras, lower frequency. Upper chakras, higher frequency. So we're working in a prayerful way, but also we're working in a very embodied way with the architecture and how energy flows and works in our body. Yes? So let's do it. Mindfully stretch. Mindfully take a pause, breath, center. What am I doing? What's in front of me? What do I intend to do? So you go to check-in, centering again. Then you light, you do the incense, and you sit back down. And then you line up again. 3 minutes, my friends. Sorry, I didn't mean to rush everyone. Maybe 3 minutes wasn't enough time for some people. So if people need a little more time to stretch, feel free to do it now. So just in keeping with the analogy of the river, the Grand Canyon at one point in time was just a little water on the surface. Could have been the smallest of streams, but the flow of water increased and grew with time, and then patterns emerged. And that can be like us. Small intention and a small movement. Suddenly the flow's greater, and then we've created habits, good habits. And then suddenly it's a whole other thing. That it started just with the smallest of things. But the perseverance and the continuing suddenly became something. And one day somebody asks you, how did you do that? And you'd be like, I just started. And then with time, it became this. It's also like a beaver dam. You know, beavers, they take wood and block up rivers, streams, right? And the water doesn't flow anymore, or it's a small fragment of the water that it should be. So it's maybe 5% of the flow. Had there not been a beaver dam, well, that's like our bodies. We have flow everywhere, but it's maybe 5-10% or 75%, but we're missing that last 25% or that 95%. By doing this, it's like making little holes in the beaver dam and more water gets through. But if you look at the videos, and somehow some videos came through that I just randomly saw, there's a hole that's put in there, but with the pressure behind the dam, what should be flowing, going through that hole naturally just grows on its own because the natural flow, the natural way of it being is for all the energy to flow. So the pressure of the dammed up energy causes these little efforts, a little here, a little there, a little prayer there, by their natural selves increases the flow. And then the result gets greater and greater and greater the more we put in the effort. And at some point, it just naturally continues with very little effort. It doesn't mean we stop doing these things. It means the difficulty, the obstacles, I have to do this, or I want to do it, kind of go away. You start wanting to do it. You do it and you don't even realize you're doing it. It just becomes part of your life. And as opposed to feeling, oh, I got this little benefit, sometimes you walk away and you're like, oh my God, what in the world happened? It becomes, oh my gosh, because the flows increased and your range of experiences increase and the ease and desire to do it increases. But sometimes it just starts with that little flow, that one little decision to just make a slight adjustment on your steering wheel. But look, just a 1% degree adjustment on the boat or in a car, in a boat, right? You're going due north but you decide to just do that 1 degree off from due north, leads you in 100 miles in a wholly, completely different place. And so by making that intent to lean into God or lean into the universe, to lean into prayer, to lean into alignment, just that little movement with the course of time will lead you to a better place. And that little movement creates a momentum in that direction. So that 1% becomes 2%, becomes 5%, because you've changed and you've decided to move to the left or to the right or whatever. But that decision can lead to another decision in the same direction. So always be encouraged. The Grand Canyon started by a small stream. The desire to move the steering wheel of a boat, the wheel of a boat, can cause a complete change in direction. And it becomes with the first time. That first decision that I made to do whatever, let's just take meditation. The first time I tried to meditate, boy, was it a train wreck and horribly difficult. I thought I was going to die. 20 minutes felt like an eternity and a half. But then I again, and then again, and then again, and then different levels, different complexities, this and that, and then whoa. Decision to do regular services through my entire life creates change. I ended up in a different place than most people when I meditated because my alignment going in was different than theirs. But I took on a different skill set that helped me understand things in a different way. But it starts with those little decisions, those little actions that we take in our life that's a little better, a little more aligned, where opening the flow, we are changing and rebalancing. Taking time to pray connects us with a very, very deep river, very sacred, holy river, and it brings it into our lives to heal us, remove the blocks, increase our flow. Amen. So let's get ready and we'll start. I have updated on the website the lists of all the names of God and the Hebrew names of God that I've put on there, 3 pages. So it's available for download. It added the Shekhinah Shalom and other forms of the Shekhinah. And I'm putting back up this week reformulated musical files and other pictures, which I've started working on. So I hope I'll have it in time done for next Sunday. But the new Names of God sheet is up there for people to download on www.wisdomoftheshalom.com. we'll start with the Shema, full of blessings, very powerful. Good way to open that phone line. I feel it like it's the official picking up the line. The profession of faith, bringing that blessing of this prayer, structured prayer, but if done with intent, becomes more than the words, because it can become a profession of faith. And for those who aren't from the Judeo-Christian religions, you could open yourself to the blessing of it. It's openly offered to anyone. Just say, it's from this tradition, but it has blessings, so I hope to receive some of these blessings, and you will. This is not an exclusive club where the blessings are kept only for the select few. It's meant for the world, because from our perspective, from the religious perspective, we are all sons and daughters of God, and therefore the blessings of God are available to everyone. And that's in the religious text. So I'm on firm ground. So, the Shema. And please say it along with me if you feel called. It's not just hearing it, it's saying it. Don't be shy. Just think of me. I'm broadcasting it to a lot of people, and I'm not very comfortable with my voice, but I'm still doing it. Right? So you could say it at home. It's the vibration in your body. You're working directly with sacred energy in your throat chakra. And by saying it with intent and desire to become better and to connect with God, that activates the upper chakras. Hearing it, it's not quite all of that. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shalom, 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 Shalom. Abba, 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 Abba. Shalom. to breathe. Let go. Exhale tension. Release to the exhale. Sometimes it's helpful to release through the mouth and angle your neck upwards by having your neck like a above 90 degrees, sort of 120, 130 degrees. So more further up, it opens the throat area and energy can really release. It's more of a less constricted. So if everybody takes an inhale through the mouth or through the nose, but then exhale with the chin further up. See how that feels. And if you're doing mantras or even if you're just doing an open meditation, it's okay sometimes for your eyes to be and your neck pointed just down right in front of you. It doesn't always have to be at the normal angle. Sometimes by it being almost straight down, but just a little bit in front of your leg. If you're cross-legged, that's a posture that really brings your energy together. And sometimes when things are tough, that's where you need to start. And you'll feel that the energy is easier there. And as you work through whatever that is, your gaze will naturally go up without effort. You have to start with the posture and the position that you feel is where you are. You're mindful kind of where the optimal is, but sometimes that's where you are and that's where you start from. And sometimes when I find myself starting from there, after 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, my gaze suddenly has been shifting up slowly, but I needed to work through that. And it wasn't from being where optimally I thought it should be, because it would be hard to get there without that process. For me, there's a process. Sometimes it starts there, starts where I'm at the shrine, but often I look straight across. But there's a movement gradually to where the neck kind of places itself. But that comes with time. But it's okay to have a close-in position. We have to work from where we are that day at that moment. Okay, let's continue. And if you're using a mala, prayer beads, sometimes you just focus on the breathing and the releasing of energy, and you're no longer on the name of God you're using. That's okay. Remember, you've infused the name in the beads. So you still move the beads, but just by moving them, because you've used the beads so much and you associate them with the name of God you're repeating, just moving the beads puts out the energy of the name of God. My word for it. So if you're focusing on your breathing or the energy moving or whatever is going on, and the name of God repetition stops inside of you or you're saying out loud, that's okay. You'll notice if your hands are still going, your fingers are still moving the beads, then that's the anchor of the prayer and it's energetically still occurring. Sometimes it's good to let go into the process of what's occurring energetically and have that flexibility. It's sort of navigating the river, working through the turbulence and the flow. And by doing that, you're supple, you're working, you're not rigid, and then things move very quickly. So it's an open situation, just like you can shift the different names of God, working with stillness, doing the Aleph. It's open, there's a flow. And as you practice for a while, you realize you've built a structure to the flow, and therefore you could just let go and allow the current that's being generated to take you. Without thinking about it, you switch to different names of God, and it feels like it's the one that needs to be said, but there's no conscious thought. You sit in stillness because that's what's occurring. You go back to the name because, well, energy made you go back to the name. But there's a container, there's a structure, there's practice, and there's also knowledge. But you're not thinking about any of that because you've worked on the structure and you've trusted that it's aligned and proper from what you've learned in your own practices and experience. Then you have the confidence to let go into that. And then you really start seeing how the road doesn't need to take as long as you think it does. And it's easier to sit for 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 5 days with breaks. And how you can do it as you're sleeping. Things open up because you're in an open flow. And that open flow is the connection of the upper chakras. Okay, let's practice. remember God's light is 24 carats. What gives us life inside our core is 24 carats. Pure divine gold, purest of blessing, source of life, the source of everything. Now, if you feel called, now you do your prayers, that conversation. Now that you've found a greater alignment and connection, this is a sweet spot, a good place to be able to do that communication. You can ask, you can think, you can question, you can be in homage. It's open. There is no right way. But the door is very open right now. So, the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll start our prayer. And people can also keep doing the mantra or whatever they've been doing, or mixing in the prayer with the mantra. You make it your own, what feels good for you.
תרצה עולם ועד.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. I wish you all a very beautiful week, and I look forward to being with you all next week.